Welcome back, WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and Baltimore Positive. Calm, local, and sort of waiting on sports like everyone else. This guy is an author, a writer, a big brother, uncle type to me and a bunch of people around me back when I was breaking in as a young, punchy sports writer at the Baltimore News American, formerly known as the News Post and the Evening Sun and the Baltimore Sun. This guy was a News American alum who went on to the Philadelphia Daily News, where he made a life north of here, and he's not even Dick Girardi, believe it or not, from the Philadelphia Daily News. That's the other Baltimore guy. Mark Kram remains my friend, and the author of Smokin' Joe, The Life of Joe Frazier, as well as Like Any Other Normal Day, A Story of Devotion. But more than that, a struggling Baltimore Orioles fan and Terp alum up there in Joe Flacco's neighborhood up near Haddonfield. What's going on, Mark Kram Jr.? How the heck are you in semi-retirement in the swamps of Jersey?
That's quite a build-up there, Nestor. Thanks a million. Yeah, I am a struggling Oriole fan. That's my claim to fame these days. Have been for a while, I might add.
Well, look, man, for like all the people that love sports, that made a life from sports, I mean, you take it from your old man, right? I mean, my cousin came here on a trade from the White Sox and brought my father, hoping he'd wait tables and have a son that could be something American in the year 2020, right?
Mm-hmm.
Man, the world has really changed here the last 6 months, and first of all, I think you're one of the finest writers I've known. So I never say that to you, but I do stand in admiration for anybody who's a better writer than me when I was growing up wanting to be, in the best American sports writing books and all that stuff. But this time of life, sitting back and doing your own Hemingway turn, this has been a hell of a 6-month period, right? I mean, forget the toy department
really.
and what you try to extract out of a prize fight or the life of Smokin' Joe. What the world is going through the last 6 months has been just an incredible thing from a writer's perspective.
Right. It's like nothing that I've ever really seen, really. It's been, and I don't think anyone has. Everything's stopped, and our efforts to get it going again is running up against tremendous fear in society, at least among many people. It would seem that, if we get back to normal, we're sort of opening ourselves up to real danger. So, and I sort of fall in that camp. I'm very skeptical about reopening sports at this point. I think it could be could have some grave consequences.
I concur. And the thing, and I've taken a little downtime last couple weeks. I was going to run for mayor last month. We had a different outcome here. My life was moving in a different direction. I'm now sort of reformulating what I'm doing here with Baltimore Positive in my career, having elected to not run for mayor this summer. And I'm thinking about where I am and where sports is. And I'm looking at this on the eve of this, right? Like, I hear the crack of the bat. Mark, I live 2 blocks from Camden Yards. I mean, I hear the empty stadium. I hear the baseball going when I open the window. Literally, the window right here looks at Camden Yards. And I hear it, and I'm thinking, okay. And then I see Harbaugh on vacation, and Eric DeCosta and I vacation the same spot. We text back and forth once in a while. And I think they're bringing these football players in. The basketball thing hasn't gone well. The Nick Markakis types have said, no, thank you, right? I'm not going to do this. And I'm thinking there's all sorts of people of all walks of life, black and white, young and old, third base coaches that would be more susceptible, owners, general managers around football teams, that you would say, where else in our world would we sanction 22 grown men to get together and not wear masks, put them in a mud pit, right? Let them wrestle around for 3 hours and come out with this piece of leather for our entertainment and as an inducement to wager, quite frankly, especially in your state.
Sure, yeah.
And where else would we sanction that? Or call that good policy? Where else in life what car dealership, what supermarket would we say, let's get people together and mud wrestle without masks for business? I don't, it's insane.
It's absurd. It's an absurd proposition, and, it's for the Benjamins, right? It's for the Bucks to keep that cash flow going, but I don't think the players want to be playing. And it's from a fan's perspective, watching a ball game without crowd noise is just it's like watching a tennis match at Patterson Park. I mean, it's like where's the excitement? Where's the enthusiasm? I mean, they're talking about augmenting augmented crowd noise. That's the thing they're talking about doing. How weird is that? That may be the worst idea ever. Really?
Well, and we're seeing like Adam Jones play in the middle of the night over in Osaka, right? We're seeing in Europe they pulled off a relatively successful, as much as you can soccer matches, right? I would ask at this point, what's the value of sports as you see? Between you and your father, it was your whole life. It's been my whole life for 35 years.
It's just not that it doesn't. It's a distraction. It has a negative value, in my view. I mean, we don't need to be distracted from really what's going on in the country today regarding this pandemic. This is a highly transmissible disease. Highly. I mean, we don't need to be pretending that it. We don't need to be distracted from that. This isn't like World War II, where the enemy was over in Europe and our boys were over there, our men and women were over there fighting the enemy over there. This is in our own backyard. This is this is something we have to be aware of on a daily basis. We just don't need to be distracted from the idea and the idea that things are okay. Sort of less. It'll lower our guard. Really.
Mark, next Friday the Orioles are going to Fenway Park. Are you going to watch?
No, I'm not going to watch this. This isn't baseball. This isn't. I just don't need it. I don't need the. I can imagine gamblers will. Getting bets down.
Well, the weird thing is, how do you even bet on this where pitchers aren't going to go 3 innings? I mean, I don't even know. It's going to be like spring training in February, not even spring training at the end of March. I mean, that's what striking up this thing for hockey players or basketball players. I felt like they could sort of pick it up aerobically and where they are. Baseball, to me, was the one that would be a lot further away from being ready to go, especially with pitchers and hitting and timing and all of that. That a 60-game season, it's like an extended spring training for no one.
Well, but who needs it? Who needs a baseball game in an empty stadium played by players who, under these circumstances, this isn't the same game. And now nothing's the same, of course, in society, and we have to sort of adjust our thinking about this. But I just don't see it as being legitimate entertainment. My God, we'd love to go to theaters or movies or this or that. We just can't at this point. Why are sports trying to intrude into this? They should just go quiet until this thing's resolved.
Well, and it's money, right? And part of this on the baseball side, and I know you know this, writing about this forever, there are some places where there might be money to be made, in New York or L.A. or whatever. But why do the Orioles can't win, right? You can't win a championship. So if the reason to play is to win the championship, then they're not playing for that. I don't think they're making any money. I feel like that at some point the poorer owners, the ones that are going to lose money, they lose every argument. They always have, right? But we go back to 3 weeks ago. If you would have taken my first invitation, you and I would have been bitching about the Players Association not getting along, and they can't even figure out how to get on the field. Well, at least they figured that part out. That conversation's moved along. But I think about it and say, where the people that aren't making money, how can they not be louder and say, what is the outcome here, guys? Is the outcome a Dodgers-Yankees World Series on the second week in November? Then just get together and play it for a week now, and we'll just skip the season because we can't make money and we can't make the playoffs, and we're exposing our employees to maybe death, literally. Right? You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's just, what if one of these players brought it home to a family member, a wife, or what have you, and there were. This disease grabs a hold of you like nothing I've ever seen. It turns your lungs to tar. The people that have had this. You should listen to the interviews. I'm sure you have. It's a horrible, horrible illness.
Well, I lost a 47-year-old friend last week to COVID. Guy I grew up with on the east side. Several friends of mine hospitalized. I keep a wide net, right? Mark.
Yeah.
I touch a lot of people in a lot of places, a lot of ages, a lot of colors, I had my friends with masks on over in Italy. I had two friends of mine back in February. I was bringing them on the radio as sort of like, what's that like? And 3 weeks later, here we are now 6 months into what's that like? Now we know what that's like, right?
And, baseball, I think, is facing a reckoning, to tell you the truth. If you look back, attendance has been down 4 years previous to this, right? I think you're going to see franchises move, if not a full-fledged, over the course of years, a consolidation of the sport. Because I don't think that they're cultivating young fans, frankly. I think that they're dining out on our generation, who have far better memories of what baseball was than the slop they're putting out there today.
Well, I've been banned for 15 years. I mean, literally, I'm 15
have.
years of being banned right now. How should I feel?
Well,
you know what I mean? Like, how should I feel? And then I see Nashville's beating the drum for minority ownership, and they want a team there. And Oakland and Tampa and the Orioles are the bottom feeders. And the questions for the city now that we have a new mayor and Brandon Scott's going to run the city. Who's going to be the one that saves the team for here? If another girl calls, who is going to be the one that brings flowers here?
But right. But do you think that they're cultivating young fans today?
No, they're not. Come on, Mark. You're a Loyola guy, right? Like, you tell me Loyola in your era how many lacrosse players versus baseball players, because you still had baseball players. And
right.
Now where we are in the modern era where lacrosse and baseball play in the same time, the way kids are now, you're either one or you're other from birth, and you play them 13 months a season, and you throw you got club teams and it's all instruction, all of that stuff, right? I don't feel that with baseball here.
But baseball back in the 60s and 70s, I mean, they were likable. You could root for them. I mean, these guys today, I mean, I liken baseball to an old friend, old dear friend who's suddenly come into a pile of money and has readjusted his relationship with you.
You should be writing about that, Kram. I want to read that. I want to read that essay. That's it. That's it, man. You just gave me the thesis. It's perfect. Let's go.
Well, that's how I think of it. It's not the same friend I used to have. Where you could sort of let your hair down and sort of enjoy yourself over a beer. It's become far more marketed, and the players are greedy. The owners are greedy. They're trying to squeeze out of it every dime they can get. And I'll tell you, with the economy, we haven't seen the effects of what this pandemic is going to do with the economy, because the economy is really going to go in the tank. And there's not going to be people out there to throw money at baseball. Why would they? Or could they? Well,
you live, about 6-7 miles from the stadium up there in Philly, right? Literally?
Yeah, very close, over the bridge.
How often do you go to a Phillies game? Last 10 years, and the Phillies been a very representative organization, right?
When I wasn't working?
Yeah. When you want to have a hot dog and a beer.
Yeah, I take my daughter once a year.
Once
a
year. Okay, all right.
That's it. Once a year. And I don't think we'll do that anymore, actually.
Well, when was the first time you went to 33rd? So what was the first baseball game you ever saw, Mark?
Oh, geez, early 60s. I think my dad was working at the Sun, and they used to get, back in the day when people weren't so sensitive about these sorts of things, the Sun papers, they used to send in stacks of tickets, right, to the sports department. The Orioles used to send over, big stacks of tickets, and the writers used to use them, and Dad used to take me. I think we saw Roger Maris go for his 60th home run in Baltimore.
1961.
Was he going for 61? I forget.
No, it was 1961, I'm saying. Yes.
1961, yeah, but we saw him at the end of that season go for, I think, his 60th home run in Baltimore. I forget it was the 60. Must have been the 60th, because in any case, it
well, you
doesn't
came
matter,
at it different because your dad worked in the sports department of a newspaper, right?
Yeah, and I had a dear family friend that used to take me to a lot of games, and when I was old enough, I used to just, get down there myself and walk up and get a box seat for $4. I mean.
But you're an interesting cat because you held season books down here, right? Like, I mean, you came down on Sundays for a long time and went to baseball games,
Yeah,
right?
well, yeah, one season I bought a season ticket just to get reacquainted with friends. I thought it'd be a nice outing, but it really got to be. It was the same promotions, the same marketing promotions, every game, the same video productions every game. It got to be stale, old, and half the time. When that Wade Miley was pitching, I remember one game, he walked 11 batters in 5 innings. I mean, I don't need to watch that.
and then Wade Miley's like pitching in the World Series a year later. Mark Kram Jr. is the author of Smokin' Joe, The Life of Joe Frazier. He is a Baltimorean, a Maryland graduate, a Loyola High graduate who escaped up to New Jersey to work for the Philadelphia Daily News and write all sorts of things and award-winning writings in Cape Towns and all sorts of things. But more than that, the life of Joe Frazier and boxing and all of this. Where's sports in all of this? I guess some of it's tried to come back, right? Golf, tennis, these things that make sense. Baseball, football, basketball, hockey, we're trying to figure that out. But for you, boxing was the thing that you write books about and a real passion for you.
Well, yeah, I mean, that ship has sailed as well. I mean, boxing isn't what it used to be. I was writing about Joe Frazier. I was writing about another time in American history, really, 70s and 80s.
But some of that fight's come back this summer now, hadn't it?
Well, I mean, it's not going to be what it was, boxing. No,
I meant the issues of race in America and where
I see
what all
yeah,
that represented
yeah. Well,
at that time, right?
Well, that's a conversation really that never ended, really. I mean, it just sort of went on, the volume was turned down, but it's been a case that, the flare-ups between Ali and Frazier and the partisanship, the racial undercurrents, that's been our history for forever, and now we're seeing it sort of flare up again, and it's always going to be that way. This is a conversation that needs to be had, and it will be had.
Mark Kram Jr. is our guest. I would tell everybody where to find you, or like tweeting and all that. But you're sort of done with all that. You're kind of hanging out. And,
I have a website, www.markkramjr.com. So I got a bunch of my stuff up there, and if anyone's interested in reading,
if you want to read good stuff, you'll go up there and take a gander at that. I wanted to ask you about your background as a journalist and where we are in life with the media's bad and the media's fake news and like all of this nonsense that's been attributed to this con man running the country. But where truth is, and from the time I was 15 years old to have Jack Gibbons and John Stedman and Mike Marlowe and all of these, Bob Paston, these incredible people around me to sort of keep me in line and teach me that the things I wrote in the newspaper, that my name was on it. And my father told me, if your name's on it, it has to be true. My mentors told me that that's the way it was. My teachers told me that I was a guy that read the newspaper and trusted it as the newspaper of record, that it's in there. There must be some sort of truth to it. And I was taught and raised that way. And I guess at 52, when I see that John Lewis died on Facebook and I know it's a scam, like the other day that happened, or like these crazy things, the first thing I say is, who's the author of the story? What's the source of the media organization?
Well, you have to ask that.
Those are the first things I ask, but we're in a 5 percentile. 95% of the country doesn't ask that, and the things that they share on social media become literally phone booth, as we would call it in the old days, right?
Well, that's been what I view as this concept of quote unquote fake news that the president has put out there for 3 or 4 years now has been immensely harmful to society. I got to tell you, when I worked on a paper, and I know you had the same experience, if you put something false in the paper,
your job was gone.
Was it a legit? Yeah, you'd be fired. There wasn't any question about that. And you would write an article, it would go through layers of editors before it got into the paper. They were called gatekeepers, right? You don't have that today. Anybody has an opinion about something or some sort of thought that's sort of half baked, it sees the light of day, and it really is pretty awful. Now, if I was, you can't hold. I mean, there is a lot of false stuff out there, but it's not appearing in the New York Times or the Washington Post or the big papers that put an effort into finding. Now, they make mistakes, right?
Absolutely.
But it's not. They take their business very seriously, and
I mean, my whole life was around really serious people. You know what I mean? And I don't think of it like that, but the schooling I had as a 15, 16, 17-year-old kid in a sports newspaper, and then going to the to the Evening Sun on the 5th floor and watching the editors arrive at 6 o'clock in the morning, trying to, chase out the morning paper, get the evening paper out, the whole deal, and how your word and your integrity and a fact was a fact, and a fact came with 3 sources to back it up, and you had to make sure if you're putting it in the paper. We've just come a long, long way from checks and balances.
Well, I'll tell you, when I was writing long pieces for the papers that I was with, Baltimore News American, the Detroit Free Press, and the Philadelphia Daily News, and any magazine work I did, not only would I interview the people at great length and write the pieces, I would call them back up and make sure that I had the details correct. I mean,
well, we're like private eyes to some degree, right? It's sort of the same job, right?
People think that you just throw this stuff out there. This is a laborious process. That's why the news business is a very expensive business. You can't not anyone can do it, just the way not anyone can fly a plane. You have to be trained. You have to be held to professional standards. And the journalists that I knew in my career were all quite cognizant of the fact that, they were dealing with people's lives, and they were absolutely, very cautious in what they put in the newspaper.
Well, getting it right was significant because it had your name on it.
Not just right, but they were sensitive to how this was going to play. I mean, is this a story we should be doing in the first place? What's the merits? What greater good is it serving? These are all questions that are bandied about every day on papers, and this isn't something that was just cooked up on the stove. I mean, this is serious business, and I think people have a kind of a distorted idea of how the news is made.
Just like they had a distorted opinion when you had a bad headline that they thought you wrote the headline, right?
Oh yeah, I mean, or if they catch you in a small mistake, they embroider it to think that it's a sloppy operation
or part of a conspiracy, even worse, right?
Yeah, they're projecting their own anger and their own lives onto the paper. This has been true forever, but my point is that it shouldn't get these loud voices, and there's more than ever now, shouldn't be distract you from the notion that newspapers and magazines, the good ones, are doing honorable work and society's work.
Mark Kram Jr. is a longtime sports writer in semi-retirement. If he was a horse, they would put him out the stud. The Philadelphia Daily News, longtime senior writer there, but a Baltimorean and a fellow alum on the Baltimore News Post. What years did you work at the News Post, hon?
But what wasn't the News Post then? It was the News American.
It's still News American? What year did it change? I don't
even know.
It
was Michael Lesker used to say, it was the funniest line. He says, people don't read the News American, they play it.
You know what?
There were more games and gimmicks in that thing.
I had a Lesker on a couple weeks ago before the election, so Michael and I have been at it for about 4 decades as well. It's always great to visit with you. You're always gracious to say yes and give me a smile and bring up some. We don't want to be like the old get off my lawn guys, right? Like, don't you wish we loved baseball and couldn't wait to collect the next baseball card and get the next box score tomorrow and all that? But
oh yeah, and that's what my point is. The baseball we're baseball's fans. We grew up with it in a different era. The kids today, they don't care about baseball, and that's going to come back and bite baseball big time.
Well, I might be stuck on your website here. You got all your articles up here, books, all sorts of stuff. Go to markkramjr.com. You can read about Mark Kram. Those of you who went to Loyola with him or know him from College Park or from the old neighborhood. He's up in Philadelphia eating better pretzels and cheesesteaks than we are. I will. I hope to stay in touch. And, one day I would love to just get a beer and be at a ball game with you. I don't know that that's possible one way or another. Maybe I could just come out and sit on the porch. We've stoked up the fire, and we'll watch the Phillies live via satellite play from no one. We'll have more people at the fire pit than they had at the game.
Nestor. All right.
Hey, always
they let you back in the ballpark.
Maybe one day. I'm still waiting for that invitation. Mark Kram Jr., real journalist. The book is The Smokin' Joe, The Life of Joe Frazier. That's now available in paperback. You can go pick that up. I mean, God, Mark's won so many awards. I can sit here and talk about Society Press Professional Journalist and Associated Press Sports Editors, first place prizes for feature writing in 8, 9, and 10. It just goes on and on. He's great at what he does, and he's an Oriole fan. And he's suffering like I am and you are and everyone else. Nasty at WNST.net, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and, of course, Towson, Baltimore, AM 1570. Calm, local, waiting for sports, and always Baltimore positive.